that's part of it. One of the questions we get from entrepreneurs that come to us and say, hey, we have this idea. We need a piece of software.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all these entrepreneurs, including us, have these great ideas. We're going to conquer the world. We're going to change an entire industry, all those sorts of things.
Right.
But one of the questions that we get is, what are we getting from your service that we are not getting elsewhere?
Well, that in and of itself has got a little bit loaded into it. Like for a lot of the people that have in their mind that they really want to develop software, I even would kind of take a step back that before we even start talking about what's the difference between our service and somebody else's service is really fundamentally, do you want to do this? Do you even understand what it is that you are getting yourself into? And do you understand the financial commitment? I think that's really important because if you're someone who's just selling software, yeah, sure, whatever you want. But they're really not helping that person unless that person has a lot of skill. If they're like we were, they don't understand what they're getting into. They don't understand all the different roadblocks and the different expenses. I mean, there's very commonly we'll tell people, we'll talk about development and one thing, and then we'll say, okay, well then you have to do ongoing testing, like what's called static and dynamic testing of the software to make sure that you're hacking it before a hacker hacks it, and that costs this. And then you're going to have someone ongoing just on the piece of software if it's web-based to make sure that you're keeping everything up to date, that you're working on bugs and everything. And they're like, wow, just ongoing? Yeah, just ongoing. Yes, it's expensive. And so even after you get everything done, you're going to, that's what software is. You're going to have ongoing expenses. A lot of people don't even know that. And so I think one of the first things in our process we do is we a lot of people will say discovery, but we always throw in the debate. Which is, I'm going to try to talk you out of this.
Say that again. Debate. So someone's going to come to us and say, we want to give you money to develop this product. And we're going to say, can I talk you out of it?
Yes.
All right. Tell me why. Why would we do that?
Well, because frankly, we don't have the time to be associated with something that sucks and it's going to fail.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to be very honest.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff out there just because it's my idea. I mean, my ideas, I think out loud. Most of my ideas are terrible. But I have a lot of them, so occasionally I run into a good one.
If you have enough.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And so, and a good entrepreneur would really appreciate that. Some people get offended by it, and that's okay. And if they're offended by that, they're going to be way more offended after they're $500,000 into a major project and then realize that it's not going to work. They're not going to be able to land where they want to land.
So because of the entrepreneurial background, there are strong opinions in saying, hey, look, this is probably not going to work. So let's debate as to why it should work. And the effort here on the part of Sky isn't necessarily to say, we don't want your business. Mm-hmm. It's to try to really troubleshoot and go through and say, what are the reasons for not doing this? Because when you have these big visions, it can be blinding sometimes. You're going to say, this is going to work for all these reasons, but we're not contemplating why it might not work.
That's right.
And we may be saving the person,
right,
like you said, $500,000 you're in and you realize this is not going to work.
Right.
Or there was an alternative solution that didn't even require a software
That's
build.
exactly right.
Okay.
That's where I was going to go as far as step 2. And step 2 is, prototyping as well as thinking about, do you want web-based software? You can develop software to solve a problem, to solve an internal business problem, to solve whatever, and it not be web-based. Whenever you decide you're going to go web-based, you start to bring in a lot more expenses for servers and data and people ongoing bug shooting and troubleshooting with bugs, user experience, because you got to think, when are your users going to be using this? And then depending upon, are there fees associated with that you might have depending upon your solution that are more royalty fees? There's a lot of stuff to think about. And my preference is, if you can do it, people underestimate Excel,
right?
Which sounds ridiculous. Excel, yes, people vastly underestimate Excel. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do in Excel, as we have known. There's lots of functions that we have done and built as an organization internally to be able to do things in Excel that would boggle people's minds. And we did it for $20,000 when it could, otherwise, if we'd done a web-based, it'd have been $500,000. And so that's kind of that next step that we go, okay, all right, you got a really good idea. Yeah, we agree with you. And then, is there a different way to accomplish that? Is there a cheaper way to accomplish that? Because again, everything we've done, we funded with our own money. So we've had to learn that, when we get to like our ultimate cost of software development, I think on average right now, when we do a quote all in, it's like $80 an hour. And that's a third of what everybody else out there is.
Yeah.
Or at least half. I mean,
Yeah.
no one's coming in at, that we see at least, under about $200 an hour.
And so it kind of goes back to that adage that you say all the time, where everything's a nail to he who hath a hammer, that kind
Right.
of thing. And
Exactly.
so since this isn't, we're not approaching this as, okay, software is the solution to everything, and just because you came through the door, let's go build some
Correct.
software.
Correct. Profitability is the end of everything.
So that's where we're focused. And so
Yes.
that's a value add of saying, okay, because we're entrepreneurs, we realize at the end of the day, profitability matters.
Correct. And I mean, honestly, as you well know, there's a lot of these conversations that we end up having depending upon the right circumstances, to where we'll take less fees and take an ownership in the company. And so it's really important to us to make sure it's aligned. And I guess that's probably some of the reason as to how we, it's just the whole idea that I don't want to create something that's you just own, that I wouldn't want to own.
Yeah, so if that's the structure, then you might have a good idea in our minds when
Correct.
we say, hey, can we own a part of this for
Correct.
reduced cost? Yeah.
Correct.
So that's another way to kind of reduce the costs going
Correct.
in. So you're saying, all right, already, just from the get-go,
Right.
the cost associated with working the way that we do are lower than you're going to find in the
Totally.
market.
Mm-hmm.
They may be even lower depending on how flexible we are with the partnership
Yeah.
and all of those sorts of things.
Right. I'll tell you one thing